Our next guest probably doesn't need an introduction. He is the host of The Rational National. We're talking to David Doel, remotely, of course, but that's what we do either way. So, we're professionals at this point. All you newbies figuring this out.
Yeah, I mean, even if this wasn't going on, we'd still be doing it remotely. As you know, I'm in Canada. I'm nice and safe here in my little bunker. So, but this is how it is.
It is. It's the new norm. So, David, I watch your show, and I've been on your show, which thank you so much for having me on in the past. But I find it so interesting that you're a host in Canada, and you're so spot on about American politics. And I feel like I'm always having to, everybody pays attention to American politics because it just has such an impact on the world, unfortunately, in many ways. But when did your deep interest in U.S. politics start?
It really started with Jon Stewart, basically. I mean, I wasn't even really into politics until my early 20s. I was in school for business. I really had no idea what I wanted to do as a teenager. So I went to school for business, ended up working for a year, then going back to school for video production. And then during that process, I started watching Jon Stewart, Colbert, eventually the Young Turks. And that kind of piqued my interest more in politics in general and American politics. And of course, as you say, the impact that the US has on the rest of the world. And that's kind of where my interest began. And then at some point along the line, I ran as a Green Party candidate in Canada. That was in 2015. And actually, that was inspired by Bernie Sanders. So seeing him and what he was fighting for, and seeing that I could actually, even though I knew I wasn't going to win because Green Party, there's I think 3 seats the Green Party has in Canada. I wanted to be able to have a platform and get this message out there. And then once that happened, and I had my run, I launched the channel and began to focus on the American election back in 2016, and that's kind of where this all began.
It's pretty impressive, actually. So you were inspired by Bernie Sanders. Had he already announced his run for president in 2015, or was this prior?
He had already announced. So he announced in I guess in May or June, yeah. And then I ran as a Green Party candidate starting in August of that year, so a couple months after. And he's kind of what inspired me in that run.
You were an early Bernie supporter.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, early as 2015, I guess is early, but considering he's been around for 40 years, I feel like I wish I knew about him earlier, because this is a man who, I mean, at this point, he's my hero. This is a guy who's just been on message, has been fighting for people, for poor and working class his entire career, has never gotten the recognition for it until recently. Yeah. And it shows you the character he has that very few politicians do, which is why I called it again and again. I said he is a once in a lifetime candidate. You do not have people like this come along very often with this kind of track record of actually fighting for people and being able to run for president and potentially become president. So he still is a once in a lifetime candidate. And I mean, the chances are slim at this point, but who knows? He would be a game changer.
Listen, the chances were slim for Joe Biden a month ago. Granted, he controls the operation, and it's much easier when the media is on your side and money's on your side, rules are on your side, and the Republicans seem to be on your side too. So we've got a little bit more of an uphill battle. Yeah, it's unfortunate. So we're sitting here in this crisis. Nobody, you can even write this crisis. People who write sci-fi have written about plagues and pandemics, but I don't think anybody could have anticipated something like this in an already crazy election year with a president who's out of his freaking mind. And everybody, income inequality larger than it's been, prior to this economic crisis that we're now facing. Prior to that, it was the worst income inequality we've had since 1929. So you already have a country that's just going through so much, and then we're handed a pandemic. The world was handed a pandemic, and now we are about to face what's likely to be a global depression. No bailouts for one country or another. We're all in this together. The entire workforce, with exception to people who are on the front lines, are forced to work from home if they can work from home. I mean, we're facing unprecedented times, and my friends have been talking about how they're watching cable news more, but they're also plugging in online and watching shows like ours. And I think there's something very special about being able to work in this environment. Granted, we are not, as independent media hosts, we're not taking big corporate checks, and we're not having like the governor of New York on to talk about our moms. Governor Cuomo. It's like Governor Cuomo's comedy hour every night on CNN. In fact, I would say please unplug from that and plug into us. But it does feel like this is a moment for us too to rise to the occasion and be there for the greater progressive universe and people who are at home watching YouTube more often. And I mean, you feeling there's a little bit of a shift in your show since COVID?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, this is a time where in many ways we are sort of lucky because we are able to still work because a lot of our work is simply online. So you can work from home and still do your show, whatever it is. And you're seeing a lot of people do that now. And the show is definitely I gotta say the first week where this really hit me, I had a really hard time doing my show because it just felt it was so depressing. Um, I my show generally, I try to be a little more optimistic, a little more uplifting. Politics can be kind of a thing that brings people down. So I try to take a more optimistic tune when it comes to my takes. So this crisis definitely hit me a negative way for about a week. But it reminds me in a way when Trump won, where when it first hit, you're just like, what? Like, how do you process this? And then you eventually realize you're in it now, and now it just becomes the new normal. And right now, I like this is really the last half of this week for me is me realizing this is the new normal, and I'm not even really like thinking about the situation we are in as much as I'm thinking about how do we get out of this, and how best can I inform people on what is going on while still keeping people's spirits up as I try to do during as much as it is possible to do that during this crisis. But it's definitely taken a different tone. Every single story somehow relates back to COVID. I mean, how does it not at this point? Whether it's you're talking about the primary, talking about the election. Trump just recently wanted to put troops on the Canadian border. Like stories like this, where a story like that, I can cover it and laugh because of how crazy it is. So there are still moments where you can make people laugh and hopefully enjoy the content while still learning about what's going on. But it's definitely it's a moment for independent media to really shine. And I got to say at the same time, we got competition when it comes to cable news, when it comes to network news. A lot of people now are tuning in to cable news in ways they haven't before because they want to know what's going on. And I totally understand it. I mean, it's the thing that network and cable news has that we don't is a direct line to the government. So they are able to get the direct word out on what is happening. But at the same time, I think independent media, we have a better way of analyzing what is going on compared to what cable news does. So I think I understand people wanted to go to cable news for just the straight facts. But if you want better analysis on how to deal with this and what is actually going on, then I think that's where you come to independent media.
That's a great point because the other day I've been watching CNN. I'm just as guilty. It's on. I'm watching the press conferences and Dr. Fauci, of course. Everybody loves Dr. Fauci, but it flipped a couple of days ago to a political panel, and I was like, turn it off now. I can't. It was like David Axelrod's analysis of how COVID is going to influence the election. Get off.
Yeah, the analysis is it's so archaic. Like that. It has not evolved. And now, in some ways, they've had on CNN has brought on Alexandra Rojas, though I'm not sure if she's been on recently, but she was on a little more, at least last month, while it appeared Bernie was potentially going to win the nomination. They've had on Abdul El-Sayed. So they bring on people that are more progressive, more Bernie supporters. But for the most part, it's David Axelrod and Dana Bash and people saying, "Oh, Trump struck the right tone today." And it's just like they're completely missing the point of like what is actually going on, focusing on Trump's tone and completely ignoring, the lack of testing or just the fact that people aren't getting enough money into their hands to be able to deal with this crisis. So I think I have to imagine a lot of people at home if they turn on CNN and they see David Axelrod making, comments about the election that are just not what people are feeling at home, people are going to go elsewhere or look elsewhere for some other sort of analysis. And I think that's where they can find YouTube and find us.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting because I didn't really think about it until now that, when they put so much energy into their political roundtables, and I guess it was for ratings, or they thought it was for ratings, and maybe it did work for ratings because now everybody's home and we need straight facts, so their ratings are up because of two things: there's a crisis and people are home. But Jeff Zucker notably set up those roundtables so that they were like shouting matches. I mean, I was there in 2016 when you had people like Scotty Nels Hughes and me, on a panel arguing like at the top of our lungs, and it was, I mean, that was his design. That's what he's talked about. And now I think it doesn't fit the moment, but it's also people are really tired of it, and there are alternatives where it's a little bit more thoughtful, at least for folks under 50. I mean, we know where the voting trends go, and it lines up with the cable news trends as well, which is crazy.
People want deeper analysis. Like the shouting matches make sense if you're looking for entertainment and you just want to be entertained. But now people are looking for information, and they're wondering what is going on, and they're wondering why the government isn't doing enough and what is happening and who is fighting for them. And you see a moment like Bernie Sanders last night on the Senate floor fighting for poor and working class people. People want, that's what they want out of their politicians. They want to see that their politicians, their representatives, are as angry as they are. And very few politicians bring that. Very few political analysis on CNN or cable news brings that. So they're going to find that kind of analysis, that kind of anger in independent media. So yeah, people, CNN at this point is just like, I get the straight news and getting the facts, but when it comes to analysis, you're not going to find the right analysis on cable news.
Yeah, I mean, they happen to have seats in the White House press room, and that's what they get. And they get press releases from the White House, and they get press releases from the CDC. But for the most part, I mean, you can go to New York Times, you could go to any, Washington Post. They all, of course, their political sides all have a bent. But when it comes to just the straight facts about the crisis, you can go there as well, and we can interpret it for the audience. Let's talk a little bit, like, just can we pull back the curtain for the audience a little bit? Because I think people wonder, how does this all work? Anytime I take a background shot when I'm on set with Sam Cedar, I can't believe how many people are like, wow, that's what it looks like? Like, this is how you guys do it? Wow. So you've been doing this for a few years now, and you've built up quite an audience. You're at the top of my feed on YouTube every time I sign in. And, this has been but you've been pretty focused and diligent about your effort. What has it been like for you to build this channel out and to see your voice grow in a movement and be looked at as a voice of reason, as a voice of authority?
It's funny because I don't really process it or think about it in a weird way. Like, I started doing this work because I wanted to get my voice out there in terms of my analysis, and I wanted people to look at issues differently in a way they maybe didn't think of before. And actually, when I started, I was doing a lot more comedy, so it was I was trying to do more of like a comedic take on news that eventually evolved into what I'm doing now. But for me, it's I take it day by day. So I focus less on sort of how the audience. I mean, obviously, I notice the audience has grown, and that's awesome. And it still bothers me when I know YouTube is suppressing all of our voices compared to what they were doing back in 2015 and earlier.
Let's go back to that in a second. I'm very curious about that, but go ahead, keep going.
Oh yeah. So yeah, at this point, I just take it day by day, and I enjoy what I do. As long as I find the right story I want to focus on, that's kind of my focus. It's less about how the audience has grown, but it is awesome to see that there is an audience for this content, and that that people do come to me to get their analysis.
And it's a lot of work. I mean, I think people aren't really aware of how much goes into putting on a show. You're not just staring into a camera. You've built a studio in your house, and you're combing through clips all day and news stories. I mean, how much of your day is dedicated to this?
It's all day. I mean, even when I'm not shooting or researching, I'm watching other people's shows, and I'm like watching your show, or watching Sam Cedar, or watching TYT, watching Kyle Kalinske. Like, I'm getting different opinions, and just to see what other people are saying as well, and getting their analysis. So it's kind of a full day job. I'm awake. I wake up. I'm on Twitter, seeing what the big stories are. And yeah, as you say, it's I'm involved in every aspect of it. So whether it's finding the stories that I want to cover, researching into that story, looking deep into their sources and what I'm reading, and then get to shooting it, or getting my points down, shoot the video, edit it, post it, the whole thing, like social media. And then while this is all happening, I have, Twitter on in the background. Sometimes I'll have cable news or some other show on in the background, just so I make sure I'm absorbing as much as I can to give the best analysis possible to my audience. So it's a full-time job and then some, for sure.
Definitely. Okay, so tell me about this YouTube thing, because I'm also learning from you. I mean, I know that the numbers have changed a lot in the last few years, but why, how, help like the audience understand why it's so important to click subscribe right now and to share.
And the bell notification as well, the bell icon. So when you post a video, people will actually get notified on their phone if you click the bell. That's a huge part of it too. But yeah, so back in 2016, when after Trump won, and there was the big mainstream media hoopla about fake news, which obviously there's a lot of fake news on YouTube, but because of that, what ended up happening is YouTube then prioritized what they call authoritative news sources, corporate media. So back during the election, back in 2016, 2015, channels like MSNBC, CNN, Fox News were not getting many views at all. You can go back then; their videos were getting like 1,000 views a video, like at most. And then once YouTube changed the algorithm to focus on these authoritative sources, all of a sudden the views for MSNBC, CNN, Fox News, all these corporate channels just exploded, because every time now somebody searches up, say, Bernie Sanders or Donald Trump, they're going to get videos from MSNBC, CNN, Fox News, New York Times, Washington Post, and we're going to be on page 38, and that's what it is now. So people, like, one of the massive changes I've noticed in the back end is seeing how people find my videos. In the past, it used to be through the search function and used to be through their videos popping up on other people's channels. So, when you finish watching a video, YouTube will autoplay the next video. That back in the day, 4 years ago, somebody may watch a TYT video, and then the next video that plays maybe my video. Now, if you're watching one of my videos or you're watching a TYT video, the next video that comes up is going to be one of these authoritative sources. So it may be a CNN video, maybe an MSNBC video, or it may just be like even an official Bernie Sanders clip. So they'll also prop up the politicians and their official channels. But when it comes to independent news sources, we are pushed down. Like to be able to find us at this point, it's all word of mouth. Like you have to I have to have you on my show to tell people to subscribe to you so they'll find you. Otherwise, they're not going to find you when they go to YouTube and search for a certain topic. Unless they're typing in your name, they're not going to find you. So it's YouTube's algorithm has completely focused now 100% on corporate sources.
Is there, there's Patreon and podcasting and YouTube. I mean, do you see there in the near future being some sort of other entity that kind of compiles the left? Is it possible in this day and age? Are we just too monopolistic?
It's tough because like one of the big advantages of YouTube is that you can, at least we were able to get people that were watching other content. So maybe somebody's watching, a pop culture video, but we would still be recommended in their feed. And now maybe this person that used to just be into pop culture is now into politics because we came up one time. That isn't happening anymore. Or at the very least, it's happening a lot less than it used to happen. So it is harder for us to grow our audiences now. But yeah, in terms of being able to actually get our voice out there, we just have to kind of help each other out. And Twitch is also a platform that's pretty solid now. It's growing for a lot of people that want us to stream their content as opposed to actually posting videos. You have people up there like Hassan, who does politics, the Serfs, other people on there doing political stuff. So there is left-wing media sort of all over the place in terms of YouTube, even like TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, I guess somewhat. You can kind of stream on Twitter. But it is hard to bring it all into one and have people understand, okay, here are all the channels that are great. You can see all these channels because there's a lot of us now and we're sort of all over the place. So there really isn't a way at this point to compile it all. But hopefully maybe at some point, I think it does make sense to kind of, have some sort of a platform or just like a website showing people, hey, these are a bunch of different, progressive or left-wing channels. that you can check out that maybe you haven't seen before. But at this point, it doesn't exist.
I think a great way for us to break through the algorithm is to do all these things at once. A makeup tutorial, unboxing, is that what it's called? And then like playing with little toys, like the little kids' toys. And then in between all that, we just do our political analysis. Like, did you hear what Governor Cuomo did today?
Yeah, while doing your makeup or something. That's actually, you know what? That's actually a brilliant idea. But like, that's also kind of what happened with Twitch. People, were gaming and then began talking about politics. So you have people on there that are, I mean, I do this now occasionally as well. I have a Twitch account as well where I'll game and I'll talk about politics while I'm gaming. Now, not everybody's into it, especially I feel like the YouTube audience is definitely separate for the most part from the Twitch audience. There are definitely two kinds of audiences, but you do kind of have to get people where they're at. So if they're into makeup tutorials or they're into unboxing videos or they're into video games, if you get them that way, then you can get them in potentially into politics. But because our channels are still categorized as news and politics on YouTube, ultimately we're not going to be ever as as respected maybe as like the dedicated makeup tutorial page or anything. But that actually is, I hadn't thought about that before. If there was a way to sort of compile or get different audiences into politics, that would be at least one way to try and do it.
I mean, isn't that sort of what PewDiePie did? It was like the stupid game, I don't even know. It was like the kids, and then it's like a little Nazi too. It was like Nazi and toys.
Yeah. He's a weird one. I have a really really hard time understanding why that stuff became popular. Like I've watched his videos. It just does not appeal to me, but I'm not Gen Z. Clearly he appeals to a different generation than I do, but not even just him. People that even people that game. I love playing video games. I don't get watching other people play video games. Like I don't understand it. But I feel like I'm just a little too old to understand that really. But it's funny what people find interesting and will begin watching. And if someone on the left can find what that next thing is and incorporate that into their political commentary, they can be big.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, maybe I'll learn how to do makeup first. I'm rationing my makeup right now, so I guess that's not the right option. Let me think about this one for a little bit, because it would have to be very like survivor skills. How about that? That's what I'm gonna do. I'm sure that's gonna be something people are interested in. I'll come up with ways, recycle your tinfoil and so much more.
Yeah, and then also
with a little bit of
politics as well. I mean, you can talk about how are you surviving during this pandemic, and then just incorporate Donald Trump into it and turn into a good channel.
Yeah, I'll just like take one of my cans of beans that have been sitting there for 30 years and saying, these might be expired, but pick out the bad ones and keep the good ones. Just like you do with your politics. David, thank you so much for taking the time today. Love talking to you as always. And, just keep up the amazing work. Stay safe, stay healthy. How is everything in Toronto right now? I'm not seeing a lot about COVID coming out of Toronto.
We're doing all right. So we're at about 2,000 cases right now, which last I checked, I think the US is around 65,000 cases. So considering we have 1/10 the population, we're actually not too bad, at least compared to the US. But we are pretty much shut down at this point. People are told to stay home. People pretty much are staying home, which is, I mean, it's crazy to see just images of like cities all completely empty, but it's good that people are social distancing, staying home. And in terms of like the government response, Trudeau recently announced that anyone impacted by the virus will be able to receive $2,000 a month for the next 4 months. And that includes if you're staying home to take care of your kids who are out of school as well during this crisis. So it really applies to anybody impacted job-wise by the crisis, which it's pretty good. $2,000 a month Canadian is about 1,400 American. We're doing some other things as well, like there's a moratorium on student loan payments and on evictions, so people don't have to worry about either of those things as well. So we're doing pretty good. Hopefully, the thing is, it's so hard to know when this is going to end. people, like, these countries can do as much as they can, but people have to listen. They have to social distance. They cannot be hanging out with their friends, having parties, or even just going out, or seeing each other for dinner or anything. Like, you really have to stay home, stay separated, and just wait this thing out. And the more you do that now, the more you listen now and social distance now, the sooner this will all be over. So hopefully people listen.
That's right. I couldn't agree more. I've had plenty of conversations with loved ones about this, as I'm sure many have at this point. It's like normally they'll say, stop telling me what to do. I'm like, no, this is the time you have to listen to what I tell you to do.
This is the one time you definitely have to listen to the government. This is the time. This is the time to do that.
I know I'm annoying, but stay healthy. We'll talk soon. I really appreciate you and all you do. And if you're not already subscribed to The Rational National, please go subscribe to The Rational National on YouTube and click the little bell icon. There you go, the bell icon. And here too, if you're watching.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hopefully you're doing that. Awesome. All right, take care, David.
Thanks for having me on.